Hello, I'm your host Jim McClean. Welcome back to another episode of the Banterflix Movie Review Show. Let's see what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Devil Wears Prada 2, which is dressed to the nines as it arrives back on the big screen. We'll see if our pick of the streams, Greenland Migration, is worth watching on Amazon Prime. And we'll wrap up as we chat about Baz Lurman'S Romeo and Juliet, which is being screened as part of the Newry Spotlight Festival later this month. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me here in the studio is the lovely Hamish Calvert.
Hi, Jim.
And Jess Blair. Jess, very quickly, just as we record, I don't know about you, Hamish. We're going to find out in just a second. I hope that you did celebrate the annual festivities of Star Wars Day, May the 4th. I hope you enjoyed the festivities this year. Did you observe them, Jess?
Absolutely, and carried on the party with Revenge of the 5th the next day.
Indeed. What about yourself, Hamish? Were you enjoying Star Wars Day, or have you just realised that it was Star Wars Day as I mention it now?
Yes, as I scramble to think of some sort of Star Wars pun, but maybe I'm just saving myself for Grogu and the Mandalorian out later this month.
I'm going to have to wait to see if it's worth the wait. So on that point, let's move on and talk about some movie news.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
Do you see?
My dad is coming home.
Bringing vengeance. Bringing it all.
I need everyone at this party dead.
I can still save them.
So that's a look at the trailer for Chris Nolan's The Odyssey. It's going to be out in cinemas in July. Hopefully we'll get to see it on the biggest possible screen here in Belfast, IMAX. It looks fantastic, but yet, Hamish, fresh from talking about Star Wars Day, that is not the trailer that you're most excited about. You walked into the studio and turned to me and said, we're talking about trailers. You mentioned, will we be discussing not the one, not the two, but the three-part Kylie Minogue documentary that's dropped on Netflix. So you've now watched the trailer for The Odyssey on your phone, as Chris Nolan would have intended. But I guess the obvious question, go to you first, is what is it has got you so excited about this Kylie Minogue documentary?
Well, first of all, 3 parts. I was hoping for about 6, but we'll take that. And I would prefer the Margot Robbie biopic as she would play Kylie Minogue, as that's been discussed in the past, but we'll settle for the 3-part documentary for now. But no, I'm very excited for that. I think it's the right stage in her career to be dropping a documentary like this. Sometimes they come far too early, but I think there's...
Or far too late.
Exactly. So I think she's done a lot. She's had a bit of a resurgence in popularity recently, although for real fans, she never went away. So yes, that is one Netflix documentary I will be watching on release day.
Okay, you're really excited about that. Now, as we said, as Chris Nolan wanted you have watched on your phone in the cinema seat here in the studio. So you're kind of there. You're in the cinema seat, but you're watching it on your phone. What's your thoughts on this trailer for Chris Nolan's latest epic star-studded cast? Anne Hathaway's in there. We're going to be talking about her in just a minute. But I thought this looked fab. It's, you know, if you told me we were going to get Chris Nolan's The Odyssey, what did I think it was going to look like? This is what it is. It's got my money. I'm going to go see it, hopefully on the IMAX screen. But what about you? If you're not still watching the episode 3 of the Kylie Minogue documentary, has this piqued your interest to hand over your hard-earned cash for a cinema ticket to go see The Odyssey?
Definitely. I didn't even watch the first trailer just because it's Nolan, so I'll be there regardless. And I had seen some reactions to the trailer without actually having seen the trailer, and people were sort of saying it didn't look great, but within about 5-10 seconds of the trailer I said, don't know what they're talking about because it looks brilliant. I think the cast looks great, the cinematography is brilliant, and it just looks epic. And coming off Oppenheimer, which was epic too, but sort of it really took its time and there was a lot of smaller conversations happening. This just feels grand, big cinema. So I'm very excited for that. And there was even a puppy in the trailer, which I wasn't expecting, and I think that got the biggest reaction from me.
Okay, so, you know, a win on all fronts there for yourself. You know, Chris Nolan, we need more puppies, particularly IMAX puppies. And just because you mentioned Oppenheimer, I think it was a very different Chris Nolan film. Yeah, it was big and loud in every possible way, but I loved how Nolan used that IMAX camera to kind of focus in on Cillian Murphy's face and kind of use all those kind of like micro expressions that we got to see. Here, this is him back to his full bombastic visual extravagance that we've come to expect, and I'm excited. Jess, are you going to make this 3 for 3? Are you excited about the Odyssey?
Absolutely. It's Nolan. Like, I mean, it's almost like a guaranteed at this point cinema ticket buy, because you know it's going to be a spectacle in one way or another. From looking at the trailer, it does look like it's going to be a visual feast on a big screen, particularly IMAX. It's going to be gorgeous. The tale itself, it's a classic. I've read the book in my teenage years and I enjoyed it, so I'm really interested to see how that translates into kind of like a more modern-esque type visual feast. I think it could be quite interesting, and plus a point for the puppy.
So the puppy has won us all round here, and it would be remiss of me, Jess. You know, we started talking about Kylie Minogue in this 3-part documentary that Hamish is very excited about. Where are you going to weigh in on that front?
There's a 3-part documentary about Kylie Minogue.
Talk to Hamish after the recording. But look, that is some movie news. We've got all that to look for. Those are films that are yet to be released. And as I say, none of us have seen the Kylie Minogue documentary just yet. So on that front, let's move on and talk about something we've all seen.
Fendi, we need that. The Brunello Cucinelli pants, love those. And you definitely need an embroidered 2-piece totem set, but not the terracotta because you're so pale.
So that's a look at the trailer for The Devil Wears Prada 2, out in cinemas now, already proved to be a bit of a box office success, definitely getting bums on seats. Hamish, I do recall, and this is partly the reason why I think I asked you back on specifically for this week, because I think when we last had you on the show, one of the trailers may have been the final, may have been the teaser, I can't quite remember, but it had dropped and you were very excited about this. So we know you're a Devil Wears Prada fan, and I'm going to be coming to Jess in this front because it's interesting to hear what she thinks about the sequel, particularly having, well, we'll come to that in just a second. Did it deliver? Is it still fabulous, darling?
Well,
never good when you start with a well.
Yeah, so initially when it was announced, I wasn't excited. I thought this is a bad idea. This world that's explored in The Devil Wears Prada, which is one of my all-time favourite films, it can't exist in 2026. And then the teaser trailer dropped, and the click-clack of Miranda Priestley's heels set to Madonna's Vogue won me over, and immediately I was on board. All reservations went out the window. So I was very excited for this, but I wasn't a fan of the film in the end. I thought it had too many familiar beats to the original, and people have said that they're quite subtle, but I thought they were very obvious and almost lazy. It opens the same way. There's a European city for the third act. There's a Madonna Vogue montage. It does the same things again. And I love Lady Gaga, and I thought, I was holding out for her. I thought, she's going to save this. She can do anything, but apparently not even Gaga can save this.
Not even Rory McIlroy?
Unfortunately, that's when I knew it was over. But no, I think my biggest issue is with the writing, and I thought the way they handled Miranda Priestley as a character, I didn't enjoy that. I found it all a bit heavy for a blockbuster like this. It was meant to be about fashion, and I felt that all got lost in translation. So I think it's a bit like a really good knockoff. I think it's going to fool a lot of people, but I'm not buying it.
Okay, so you're going to, this is more kind of TK Maxx, kind of on the bargain rack kind of things. I do agree with you. I didn't love this as much as because the first one just, it's one of those films I think entered the zeitgeist in the same way I think of films like Working Girl. I think of films like Pretty Woman. It just entered that zeitgeist and it hit at the right time. And there's charm to it, and we can quote it, and we can still look back at it. And you know, even to this day, it's kind of, you look on TikTok, it's kind of it's referenced. There's audio used from that. I don't think this is going to be anywhere near the same level of memorability. That said, I always say this with these kind of sequels, it's nice to be back in that world. I do think it's a little bit convoluted in what it tries to do. It's that old kind of thing of like, we have to get all our chess pieces into place and get our plot going, a lot of stuff before we get going. Not for me, not a patch on the original, but still some enjoyment to be had. Now, this is why, Jess, I teased this a little bit as we started to talk about the film, because you hadn't seen The Devil Wears Prada. Now, you were talking earlier about you were reading the Odyssey in your teenage years. So you said this was out when you were 13. I would have thought this would have been the perfect film for yourself. The lovely Anne Hathaway from The Princess Diaries. Here she is, she's going to go on try and make it at Runway magazine, but no, you were reading the Odyssey.
I was a 13-year-old goth child. The film was never targeted at me. Well, kind of was, but too goth for all that.
Okay.
But I was interested to watch it. It's always one that, you know, as you said, it's a bit of a cultural phenomenon. I know it's being sort of heavily quoted. You know, I know so many people who enjoy the film. So when you had said about Devil Wears Prada 2, I was like, brilliant opportunity to watch the first. And I finished it going, I don't quite understand why this is such a big thing. It was a perfectly kind of fun film, but I sort of feel like it maybe doesn't quite hold up. But then went and seen Devil Wears Prada 2 in the cinema. I quite enjoyed it. I actually found it a little bit stronger than the first. More so for that slightly more substantialized maybe plot. Now, fair enough, I will agree, a little bit forced along the way of kind of bringing in the kind of state of today's journalism, this kind of wider kind of discussion of these very powerful figures, kind of having the legs cut out from under them by kind of more modern culture, and sort of seeing how the great thing of inclusiveness has kind of brought her down a little bit. I just find it a little bit more entertaining, I think, overall than the first, maybe for that reason.
Okay.
As I found Miranda an iconic figure, but a few times in the first one more just with her than maybe anything else. As someone with maybe previous bosses similar to that, you do find yourself watching her with a bit of a, I've been there. It can be painful.
We've all been there. We've all been there with it. We've all known a Miranda in our lives. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting you enjoyed this slightly more, this second installment, more than the first one. I don't know, I mean, Hamish and I clearly have had different viewing experiences than yourself. I know the answer before I ask, because we have all this problem. We have legacy sequels. Studios go, it's an IP, I hate that phrase, that will get bums on seats. And as I said, it has got bums on seats, but 20 years worth the wait.
Unfortunately not. I think there was potential. I think the issue is they tried to recreate the first one, and you can't recreate that 20 years on. The world is different. You can't have the same characters the way they were. And yes, characters can evolve and change, but I think when the characters are so loved for specific things they do, it's just, it won't work to change them. The one time the movie really clicked for me is an early scene when the four main characters are reunited and Emily Blunt's character is in a new role in a different place. And I thought that's what the sequel should have been. It should have been a spin-off with Emily Blunt's character in her new setting, and then have Miranda come in because they still work together in a certain way. So I think the focus was wrong in trying to recreate the original and sort of have new cast members in the previous roles that like Anne Hathaway and Emily Blunt had as Miranda's assistants. It just became too repetitive, but also trying to move forward. So they were trying to keep everyone happy, and in doing that, I think they've failed on all fronts, which is a shame because it was nice to see one of these legacy sequels with the entire main cast back. So that sort of did give me a wee bit of hope, but I just don't think the writing was up to standard.
Yeah, the joys and the perils of the legacy sequel, and you know, we were talking last week about Practical Magic 2, so this is not gonna go away. Studios know what they're doing, they know how to kind of manipulate us into buying cinema tickets. But look, those are films we can watch on the big screen. Let's move on and talk about something you can watch from the comfort of your home.
We can't stay here, honey. We didn't come all this way for this. I want a new beginning for our family.
Okay, the Clark crater is our best bet.
How many fragments do you think are up there?
More than I can count. It's crazy to think something so beautiful can be so deadly.
Where are we?
Everyone looks so lost.
We got it, go!
The world is a dangerous place now.
So that's a look at the trailer for Greenland 2 Migration, Donald Trump's favourite film, where it was maybe earlier in the year when Greenland was all the talk in the news. So this is arriving here in UK on Prime, on streaming services. It did, I believe, get a cinematic release in the States. So I'll come to you first, Jess. What do you think?
I feel like I need to preface this with I would like an apology for making me sit and watch this film.
No apology will be coming, Jess.
Because unfortunately, from within about the first 30 minutes, I desperately wanted to turn it off and pretend it never happened. Purely off the point of view of, I think it's a sequel that never needed to happen. The first, Greenland, is quite enjoyable. It's a fun kind of just, popcorn munching film. It's got a good bit of action you can feel. I feel like they did the tension really, really well. Kind of better than most of those disaster type movies of the family. You felt invested. I still have my odd issue with the first one in terms of the science, but we can put that aside because the film overall was fun. Greenland 2, however, I cannot. I cannot and I will not. And I feel very irked from start to finish of this whole film. It's just not necessary. All of that sort of build up of tension you get in the first one, that feeling you get towards the Garrity family, within 10 minutes you wish the meteorite had took them out. All of the focus of the first film, particularly on their son Nathan, in terms of like the insulin, the diabetes, like adding that really good tension. Suddenly diabetes no longer matters in the second one apparently. And he's also aged beyond time. It's set 5 years after the first. He's about 7, 8 years old in the first one. He's about 16 now. The plot holes alone you could drive a double-decker bus through. And let's not get me started on the science. I appreciate it's sci-fi. You're never going to get perfect science. But I mean, the basic foundations of even where sci-fi begins, they just threw it out the window.
Well, we should throw in this point, you are Banterflix's resident, science geek queen. Not only are you inner goth, our Banterflix's inner goth girl, but you're also our resident science geek queen.
I appreciate a good sci-fi. I appreciate scientific accuracy. I appreciate even a film starting in science and becoming speculative in a foundation of correctness. Greenland 2 did not do that, unfortunately.
So I think what we're saying, I think if we read between the lines on this front, Jess, you did not enjoy this movie. I think it's clear to say, I don't think your quotes are going to be going on the movie poster anytime soon. Who knows? Maybe stranger things have happened. I don't know. I mean, I'll not apologise for making you watch the film, because then I feel it opens, a backlog of various films that I've made people watch over the years. Anyone who sat in the studio with myself and watched the Amazon Prime War of the Worlds found footage film, though there's maybe apologies might be due. I think it was the lovely Dr. Nicole Hamilton sat in that. Again, my lovely wife and I sat to watch this. We thought it was fine. It was, like you said, Jess, a film that didn't need to exist, because we kind of had our, not happy ending, but it had kind of resolved itself by the end of the first film, and then it's kind of a bit of very quick retconning at the start. It's like, oh, remember when we all thought we were going to get out of that place in Greenland? Actually, no, we had to go back down, and we lived there for 5 further years, and the comets kept coming, the world's still being destroyed, but there's parts of Europe, London, etc., and further afield where survivors have carried on, even though I thought in the first one, pretty much the people in Greenland were all that was left of humanity. Special effects are a bit iffy, clearly lower budget. I didn't hate it as much as you, but I didn't love it. I didn't ask for this sequel. I watched it, it passed the time, and I guess that comes to the thing of what a lot of movies and streaming or straight to streamers do now. It passed, an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. You clearly did not enjoy that time with the film. Hamish, where are you going to weigh in here?
Well, I quite enjoyed the first film, but same as both of you, I was quite surprised that there was a sequel. I don't think anyone was asking for it. Went to watch it, pleasantly surprised that it was 1 hour 40 minutes. So that was first tick. That's good. Don't be too ambitious with your sequel no one wanted. And yeah, I had a good time with it. I think there's a nice variety of action in it. There's meteorites, there's tidal waves, there's earthquakes, and somehow it doesn't feel too cluttered or crazy. I think it does its set pieces quite well, and it doesn't draw them out too long, which I think is good. Comparatively to something like Geostorm, another of Jared Butler's, this is quite grounded, which is
Hamish,
a bit mad.
As someone who over the years has got to know the lovely Simon Brew, like yourself, I will not have a bad word said about Geostorm. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not even going to give Jess the opportunity. But we will not be bashing Geostorm on the Banterflix show here this week.
But no, I think it was quite good. I think that it's paced well, and it never stays too long in one place, which I think is a good thing for a film like this. The only real criticism I have for it is it does become a bit tedious in that we just have to get to dry land, we just have to get to England, we just have to get to the Channel, we just have to get, and it just becomes a bit episodic.
Yeah.
So I think that's its main downfall. But I like some of the sequences. I think there's a sequence with a couple of ladders and a big drop, which I thought was very good. And despite being on the small screen at home, I did feel that tension. So I think it does enough to warrant its existence. I wasn't mad when I finished watching it, but I'm not holding out for Greenland 3.
Okay, yeah. Stranger things have happened. We don't know. I mean, I will say this without going into spoiler territory. It does have one of my ultimate movie sins that I hate. A certain character has a bit of a cough within about 15, 20 minutes in the movie, and you know what's going to happen there. You know it's going to try. Someone coughing in a movie for no apparent reason, I'm afraid that the law of cinema dictates that that person may or may not see the closing credits. But look, we are going to move on and wrap up this week's show. As always, when we get an opportunity, we always try to showcase screenings or feature screenings that are happening not just here in Belfast, but across Northern Ireland. We have the Newry Spotlight Festival. It's going to be happening later this month. One of those screenings is Baz Lurman'S Romeo and Juliet. It's going to be screening the 21st of May at the Bookshelf. We've all watched it here in the studio, so before we share our thoughts on the film, let's have a look at the trailer.
Two households, both alike in dignity.
Throw your mistempered weapons to the ground!
From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life.
Who is it that you love?
Gentle Romeo, if thou dost love, pronounce it faithfully.
My heart's dear love is set.
So that's a look at the trailer for Baz Lurman'S Romeo and Juliet. As I say, it's a screening at the Bookshelf on the 21st of May as part of the Newry Spotlight Film Festival. So great to see another film festival outside of Belfast. Hamish, you hadn't seen this before. So this brings me back. So this is 1996. This is kind of, you know, I'm entering in my 44th year. This was kind of back in peak Jim era. I remember going on a lovely date with a girl that sadly, you know, the relationship didn't last, but my memories of this film did. This was well worth, you know, we have Shakespeare, we have guns, and we have Leonardo DiCaprio, and the wonderfully over-the-top, exuberant director that is Baz Luhrmann. As a first-time viewing, how did you find this?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad you picked this for us to talk about because I enjoy his other films. I like his style, and it had been on my list for far too long, so I was glad to sit down and finally watch it. I think when it started, it's very frantic. It's got the quick cuts. It's hyper stylized, and I could see how that could, if you weren't prepared for that and you weren't expecting it, you're going in thinking you're getting Romeo and Juliet. Mm-hmm. It might be a bit jarring to start with, but I loved it, and I thought it just kept the pace going really well. It was just such a different take on Shakespeare, which I really, really appreciated.
A different take, but also a very faithful take.
Exactly.
In many ways. There is some I think there's references to knives were replaced with guns. There's some minor differences, but a pretty faithful adaptation of Romeo and Juliet.
Exactly. So I think it succeeds where a lot of other adaptations don't necessarily. And what I really liked about it was it captured the real young love between Romeo and Juliet brilliantly. I thought those scenes where they're meeting each other and they're looking through the fish tank, and then there's the pool scene, and I just thought it was really endearing in a way that some other
Your heart fluttered,
adaptations-
is what you're saying. Yeah.
It did. And that was even before Mercutio was in drag. So, yeah, I just was really taken with that aspect of it. And I think it's definitely a Baz Luhrmann film. And for me, that's a big positive.
Yeah, I enjoyed rewatching this. I think it's aged well. There's certain bits of it I love more. Leonardo, for me, as much as I love him, he's now kind of Mr. Serious actor. I think he's still in the kind of Leo heartthrob Titanic mold. In here, I think we have seen him develop as an actor. But when you have just the ever watchable, I will say this now, if you've never seen this, if you're not coming into this as a Shakespearean fan or Baz Luhrmann fan, it's worth checking out just for the fantastic late, great Pete Postlethwaite, who I will watch in anything. Jess, we are nearly out of time. But I think we had another option for reviewing this week, and I changed at the last minute, and you sent me back a very kind of happy text going, great choice. So I'm assuming, going back here to your inner goth era, kind of, we've already talked about the first Devil Wears Prada. Was something like this more your cup of tea?
I can very vividly remember watching this film at a friend's sleepover on a really small screen, DVD, really poor screen, and I believe it became our friendship group's personality as a film for months after watching it. It to me is just a fantastic film. It's beautiful. The style is gorgeous. That really kind of jarring meld of Shakespeare's words with the modernized kind of world. It just works so shockingly well. And seeing that young Leo, I mean, come on. That speaks for itself. That Titanic heartthrob era, it's iconic. And I have to definitely give just a mention to Claire Danes. She is fantastic in it as well. Very, young, and they just portray that romance so beautifully. But I think the film does well in not quite over-romanticizing. You do still get that sense of, obviously, in the end of, this is not a love story. This is a toxic kind of horrible end. But I love it. It's just a nostalgic film for me. It's a great watch. I would really still recommend that it holds up, to people to watch it today. It holds up well. You'll not be disappointed by it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good film. I wouldn't go as far as say it's the definitive Romeo and Juliet. That, for me, still is Romeo and Juliet. That still sits up there for me as the high bar of Shakespeare adaptations. So on that front, we were pretty much out of time, so all that's left for me to do now is thank my guests here in the studio. So thank you very much, Hamish.
Cheers, Jim.
Thank you very much, Jess.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.